My health's been declining recently. To support my mother-in-law with her health issues, our family decided to temporarily live in her house, and so began our days of being constantly bossed around by my mother-in-law and brother-in-law. Then, one day, as my husband was driving, a call came in from my mother-in-law on his cell phone. Because of the poor signal, we put the call on speaker mode. Is she still alive? Stubborn, isn't she?
If I wasn't there, she might have seriously been dead.
Unaware that they were on a call, the two began their alarming conversation. And just like that, their sinister plan crumbled. Next, they were to receive social penalties for their outrageous actions. My name is Wendy. I live happily with my husband Tony and our beloved daughter Vicky. Our daughter has recently started kindergarten, and she seems to be having a great time every day. Seeing her like this brings a smile to my face each day. Then one day, my husband got a call from my mother-in-law, Barbara. My health's been declining recently, she said in a weak voice. Barbara had suffered a stroke in the past, leaving her with a slight paralysis in her limbs. That being said, her symptoms were not severe, and she was able to live her life without major inconvenience, walking around with a cane. According to her, the after effects of the stroke seemed to be causing her pain. It's hard to live like this. I'm not getting any younger, and if something were to happen, I might not be as lucky as your father was, Barbara continued nervously. What about we all live at your place until your health stabilizes? Catching me off guard, what about your brother, Matt? As far as I knew, Matt, Tony's brother, was living with my mother-in-law, but according to her, Matt was busy job hunting and she didn't feel secure with him alone. I was torn. To be honest, I didn't get along well with Barbara. She always had a lot to say, and I had experienced her being rather harsh towards me in the past. But it wasn't just me who had issues with my mother-in-law. My husband, Tony, didn't exactly have the best relationship with his mother either. Apparently, she had always favored Matt, the eldest son, while Tony was treated as if he were an afterthought. When I broached the topic, Tony replied with a troubled look. That's true, but still, I am her son. Indeed, this seemed like a sentiment typical of Tony, a man of strong responsibility. Out of respect for my husband, I agreed to the temporary move to my in-laws' house. Moving homes is a big deal. Fortunately, our home and the in-laws' home aren't too far apart. Our daughter Vicky probably won't even need to change her kindergarten. Also, Vicky herself seems fairly excited about the idea. So I convinced myself, thinking, it's just until Barbara's health improves. With that, we started our life at my in-laws' house. But my burden turned out to be more than I expected. First off, the house itself is pretty old, and its size means housework is quite a struggle. The time required for cleaning is off the charts. What's more, the volume of cooking and laundry has nearly doubled. I was under the impression that I'd just be helping my mother-in-law, but in reality, most of the housework fell on my shoulders. And while I was working hard, my mother-in-law was... Vicky, darling, it's such a lovely day. Why don't we go shopping together? I want to come. And off she'd go, enthusiastically spending time with her granddaughter. And then, you see, that painting of Matt's won a gold medal. Oh, really? That's interesting. Hey, are you really listening? This is the amazing part. She'd ramble on endlessly about trivial past achievements of her favorite son, all while munching on snacks. To be honest, it was seriously annoying. She seems to be in great shape. How is she in poor health? I eyed my mother-in-law with suspicion. Suddenly, she started coughing as if she was startled. Am I imagining the insincerity here? Well, let's end my rant about my mother-in-law here. Next is about my brother-in-law. He was also a significant pain in the neck. Contrary to the stories I'd heard, Matt turned out to be a jobless singleton almost entirely dependent on his parents. And his thoughts and actions were so childish. It was hard to believe he was a man in his 40s.
Wendy, I'm hungry. Where's my lunch? Wendy, why didn't you wake me up? I missed my favorite show.
I found myself catering to him as well. Even Vicky, my daughter, helps out around the house. He seemed to think he was entitled to having others look after him. "I'm not your wife nor your mother," I screamed inside my head. The fact that he called me Wendy Darling was also creepy. Moreover, there was something unnerving about the way he looked at me. So, I was leading a tough life, both physically and emotionally due to these two people, but one night, several relatives had gathered for a drinking party at our home. I went upstairs to fetch a fan to improve the ventilation in the living room. The fan should be around here somewhere.
Wendy.
When I turned around, my brother-in-law was standing behind me out of nowhere. Then, with a smirk on his face, he said something unbelievable.
Why don't you ditch boring Tony and start over with me?
I couldn't believe my ears, but it seemed I had heard him right. He was ogling me with a lascivious grin on his face. He might have been emboldened by alcohol, but his remark was disgustingly crude to the extreme. "Brother-in-law, you're clearly too drunk. That's not funny, even as a joke."
Huh? Are you saying you want to reject me? I might spill your secret to Tony, you know.
What? I don't know what you're talking about. I'm busy, so I'm gonna leave now. With that, I tried to ignore him and head downstairs, but he forcefully grabbed my arm out of the blue.
Come on, I'm way better than Tony.
"Stop it! Just stop!" Startled, I jerked my arm away from my brother-in-law. Unexpectedly, Matt lost his footing due to my sudden resistance. He tumbled down the stairs, ultimately hitting the back of his head against the wall with a groan. Hearing the commotion, Tony and other relatives rushed over. "Hey, what's going on here?" "Oh, Matt just slipped." "Oh my, look at the bump on his head." While his mother fretted over him, shaking him violently, other family members managed to calm her down and took Matt to another room for first aid. Amid all the confusion, my quarrel with Matt was forgotten. I contemplated whether to tell Tony about Matt's advances, but decided to stay silent for now, not wanting to cause unnecessary worry. If Matt's actions escalated, I would speak up. With that thought, I made my way towards the living room where everyone was gathered. Then, in the corner of the hallway, I saw Vicky looking at me with a worried expression. "I'm sorry if I scared you, honey. Did I wake you up? Let's get you back to bed." "Okay." Something about Vicky's demeanor felt off, but it was late and I didn't question further, taking her to her room to put her back to bed. Life remained difficult due to my mother-in-law and Matt. Every day, I was forced to entertain my mother-in-law's uninteresting chatter and attend to my immature brother-in-law's needs. I felt like running away. However, Matt hadn't made any more advances since that incident. It seemed he had learned his lesson after my strong rebuff. With that, I felt a bit relieved and carried on with my life at my in-laws. But then, on a particular day, another unexpected incident befell me. I was having lunch with my mother-in-law as usual, when I suddenly felt dizzy after eating some tomato soup. Next, I was hit with intense nausea and difficulty breathing. I recognized this sensation. Yes, it was anaphylactic shock, an allergic reaction. I have a severe allergy to peanuts, and if I consume even a single one, I can have breathing difficulties. Luckily, my brother-in-law was home so we could quickly call an ambulance. Seeing me in distress, he rushed to pull out his smartphone, his fingers seeming to falter. It looked as though he had become too flustered to remember the number. When I managed to gasp out, 911, he finally started pressing the buttons on his phone. Despite some fumbling, he managed to call an ambulance, and I was rushed to the hospital where my life was saved. Lying in the hospital bed, I thanked my brother-in-law. "Thank you, brother."
Oh, thank you so much. You saved Wendy's life.
Tony cried, tears in his eyes as he grasped his brother's hand. Taken aback, my brother-in-law replied, a bit bashfully,
"Well, I just did what any person would do."
Although I was annoyed to admit it, even such a despicable person can be useful at times. I had to admit, I saw him in a slightly different light after that. But, as much as I felt gratitude towards my brother-in-law, something else was bothering me. Why had I had an allergic reaction? Afterward, I stayed in the hospital for observation for 1 day. The next day, I was discharged without any complications and got into the car that Tony was driving to return to my in-laws' house. In the car, my daughter Vicky asked with concern, "Are you okay, Mom?" "Yes, I'm fine now. I'm sorry for worrying you." "I thought my heart was going to stop when I heard you had been taken to the hospital." I was careful with those ingredients, though," I said, tilting my head. Just then, Tony's phone rang.
"Oh, it's Mom."
Because he was driving, he quickly switched to speakerphone. However, it seemed like there was a problem with the connection, and we couldn't hear what she was saying clearly. "Hello? That's strange." After a few seconds, we finally entered a stable call mode, but it seemed my mother-in-law hadn't noticed. She spoke to my brother-in-law Matt with a troubled voice. "Seems the call got cut off."
"Can't Tony even answer the phone properly? He's really useless."
Their conversation made our faces go pale.
"And she's still alive? She's really stubborn, isn't she?" "Mom, you shouldn't be saying things like that. If I hadn't been there, she might have really died."
Doesn't matter. It's just karma for hurting my precious Matt. Oh!
Well, I did think it served her right.
So, what are we going to do about Wendy?
Yeah, I'll try to win her over again. I think I can make it work this time. I mean, she probably fell for me again after this incident. After all, I'm her lifesaver, aren't I?
Unaware that they were being heard, they continued their alarming conversation. Meanwhile, Tony and I were left speechless, exchanging glances. Later, we arrived at my in-laws' house later than scheduled. "You sure took your time."
"Tony, you should have answered the phone. I wanted you to get something on your way back."
They greeted us as if nothing had happened. On the other hand, Tony and I had stern looks on our faces. Well, we had to stop by the police station. "Police station? Did you lose something?" "Vicky, your dad and I need to have a serious talk. Can you go to your room for a bit?" "Sure." As our daughter headed for her room, I thrust Tony's phone towards my in-laws. Then I replayed their conversation that had been recorded. As a matter of fact, I had quickly set Tony's phone to record mode at the time. Upon hearing this, my in-laws' face turned pale with shock. "What?
How did you—"
I continued glaring at the two who wore guilty expressions. What in the world is going on here? "Well, that was just a joke. Sort of a small payback for you rejecting Matt.
Stop it, Mom. Don't mention—
My brother-in-law stammers, trying to stop his mother from digging herself deeper, but it was already too late.
"What? She rejected Matt? What's this about?"
As I explained to my husband, his normally gentle face transformed into something monstrous. Then he furiously started questioning his mother and brother. Before his onslaught, they confessed everything. It turned out that my mother-in-law was attempting to set me up with Matt. Worse still, he seemed to be on board with the plan. So, she had feigned illness to lure me to their house. The idea of trying to turn her daughter-in-law into her son's fiancé was so outlandish, I was chilled to my bones. The reason for this bizarre plan? They felt sorry for Matt, being single despite being the older brother. Their lack of empathy was so astounding, I could hardly believe they were human. Needless to say, their selfish scheme did not pan out, and Matt ended up tumbling down the stairs in a pitiful fashion. As I remembered the events, I shuddered. At the same time, something my brother-in-law had said stuck in my mind. "What secret about me were you using as a threat?" With a side glance at my husband, he grudgingly replied,
"It was about that 50K you were hiding."
It appeared he was after my personal wealth as well, but he was way off the mark. He and my mother-in-law assumed that I was secretly earning money through stock trading or foreign exchange, but in reality, the money was from my hobby of writing, which I'd been doing for some time. In other words, it was a savings account approved by my husband, not some hidden wealth. He's always told me,
"That money is something you earned with your own hard work, Wendy. You can use it whenever you think it's necessary.
Apparently, my brother-in-law had seen my bank book by chance when he visited our house and told his mother about it.
Why not make her your wife then?
She had suggested. Indeed, it's quite a horror story. Anyway, the plot between the two of them was quickly thwarted. As for my mother-in-law, it seems she was in revenge mode because I not only rejected Matt's advances, but also caused him to get injured. So, she conspired with Matt to mix peanut powder into my lunch. She probably thought that they could retrieve the $50,000 later, but seeing me suffering more than he expected, Matt became frightened and hurriedly called an ambulance. By the way, it seems my mother-in-law had been trying to get the passcode for the bank account from Vicky all this time. Of course, there was no way my daughter would know the number, so it was a wasted effort, but she seemed to be filling my daughter's head with nonsense like,
Mommy is doing something wrong to make money. Grandma will take care of it. Oh, don't tell Mommy about this. If you do, she might get arrested by the police.
That day, the mystery of my daughter's strange behavior towards me was finally solved.
What were you thinking? Scaring your own grandchild like that? Aren't you ashamed of trying to steal your younger brother's wife? I always thought you were a fool, but I never expected this.
As Tony voiced his anger and disbelief, his fists trembling, Matt, perhaps feeling his pride hurt, retorted,
Hey, don't get cheeky just because you're my younger brother. I'm way more handsome than you. If I had met Wendy before you did, she would have definitely married me.
This further fueled Tony's anger, but there was someone even angrier than my husband. Yes, that was me.
You have got to be kidding. Tony is a decent human being unlike you. There's no way I would marry a deluded jerk like you, even if hell freezes over. You middle-aged narcissist. Grow up and stop adding darling to my name.
Before I knew it, I was shouting every insult I could think of. Matt seemed to shrink under my intense glare and harsh words. Regaining my composure, I cleared my throat and told them in a calm voice, Anyway, your actions have crossed the line. I almost died, so I will be filing a criminal complaint for assault. Please pay the damages.
I consulted at the local police station earlier. They advised me to discuss this with you first since we're family, but I have no intention of doing that now. No way. You're going to sue us?
Faced with our wrath, the two of them were pale as a ghost, prostrating themselves on the ground. Then they started to plead with us in trembling voices, trying to get us to drop the lawsuit.
Wait, we didn't think you'd be hurt that badly. Yeah, that's right. It was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. Forgive us. We're family, right?
At their pleas, Tony and I exchanged looks and started discussing. Just then, Vicky entered the room. Perhaps she was bothered by the commotion. Suddenly, my mother-in-law said with a forced smile,
Oh, come on, Vicky. We're a little busy right now. Let's go back to your room.
At that moment, I hastily called out to my daughter, Did you by chance tell your grandma about Mommy's peanut allergy? Yes, she told me to tell her about you, so I said that even one peanut would make it impossible for you to breathe and you'd die. As I gently stroked my daughter's head, I then sent a cold glare at the two of them. There's no room for sympathy here. Accept your social sanctions quietly. And so, the two of them, cast aside by me, were stunned and fell apart on the spot. Later, we hired a lawyer and formally charged my mother and brother-in-law with assault. Because it was a family dispute, they didn't end up in prison, but they had to pay about $13,000 for my medical expenses, compensation, and the like. Naturally, neither of them had any savings to cover this, having led such a dissolute life. In the end, they reluctantly sold their family home for cash and made the payment. And as for the two of them now without a home,
oh, it's going to be a little cramped in that house if all 5 of us are going to live there. Tony, when are we going to do the extension and remodeling?
Unbelievably, they seemed fully prepared to live in our house. These people are truly hopeless. Of course, such a ridiculous proposal wouldn't stand a chance. What kind of nonsense are you spouting? Talk in your sleep when you're asleep. It was probably an explosion of pent-up frustration. The two of them, vehemently rejected by us, hastily left the scene. We heard that they later rented a room in a rundown apartment. They are said to be living a tough life, surviving on the wages my brother-in-law earns from his part-time job. On the other hand, we had returned to our own home for the first time in half a year. Such a peaceful atmosphere. I breathed a sigh of relief.
I'm sorry. It's my fault for deciding to live together. I should have thought more about it.
Don't worry about it. It's your seriousness that I like. That's why I married you. Yes, my husband Tony often gets the short end of the stick due to his serious nature, but that's why, no, precisely because of that, I respect him. I continued speaking to my dejected husband. You looked brave and cool when you punched Matt. Violence isn't good though. Hearing that, my husband chuckled sheepishly. Then, as he was holding our daughter, he said,
That's right. How about we all go out for some fun next week?
Vicky, where do you want to go? The zoo! Watching my daughter laugh with excitement, I savored the happiness, and I made a vow to continue saving that money for my daughter's future. I promise.
Dad, Mom is foaming at the mouth and collapsed. Help!
Half an hour after I ate the cake that my husband had brought home to celebrate our anniversary, I found myself keeling over. Despite our daughter's desperate pleas for help, my husband responded indifferently. Don't worry, she'll be fine. He wore an uncanny smile as he said this, and leaving me in my struggle and our daughter in tears, he walked out. He must have gone to report to someone that this plan had worked out perfectly.
Mom, are you okay?
To our crying daughter left behind, I managed to respond, I'm alright, sweetheart, and slowly got back up. With a reassuring smile, I calmed her down. I knew it. In reality, I'm the one who had succeeded in the plan. They, who are oblivious to this fact, must now witness their impending hell. I am Mia, a 32-year-old office worker. I live with my 6-year-old daughter, Emma, and my husband, Brian, who is the same age. We used to live a happy life with my husband being a caring and doting father. However, about a year ago, his attitude towards me gradually became cold and indifferent. I agonized over whether I had done something to offend him, but I couldn't think of anything. You really haven't aged, haven't you? Well, you are a 32-year-old hag after all. That's harsh. You're the same age as me, you know? Your clothes and makeup are old-fashioned and uncool. Can't you dress up more like other people? I was baffled and hurt by his sudden and baseless criticism. He was not the kind of person who would say such insensitive things. At least, he hadn't been. Back then, I didn't understand what was happening and was simply hurt.
Mom is beautiful. Don't talk like that.
Emma quickly came to my defense, but Brian just clicked his tongue and left the house. His atrocious behavior wasn't limited to just words. There were many times when he ignored me entirely. Even if I woke up early to prepare lunch, he would get furious if he didn't like the side dishes. What the? Don't put frozen food in there! You're slacking off. He even had the audacity to throw the lunch I had made into the trash can. That's awful. I only included one frozen dish. I woke up early to prepare the other side dishes.
Yeah, Mom's cooking is delicious.
Emma would always stand up for me, but it seemed like even that annoyed Brian. Emma might not understand this, but your mom isn't doing her job properly, and that's why I'm advising her.
That's not true. Mom is doing her best. It's Dad who's doing the wrong thing.
Humph. You've got our daughter well manipulated, don't you? Looking at Brian, who was glaring at me with disgust, I saw no trace of his former kindness. We were a couple who seldom fought, and I was at a loss for what could have caused this change in Brian. There was also another thing that was bothering me. Brian, who was never enthusiastic about work, started coming home late, citing overtime, and even began working on weekends. Could he be having an affair? I had a bad feeling about his suspicious behavior, but I had no evidence, and a part of me wanted to believe in him. He was still providing for our family and was a kind father to our daughter, so I kept hoping that his current foul mood would pass and he would return to his kind self. However, one day something troubling happened. When I updated our passbook, which we were saving separately for Emma's future education expenses, I found that the money had decreased. Over the past half year, $500, then $1,000 had been withdrawn, totaling to $10,000. The only other person who could use this money was Brian. The money we've been saving for Emma has decreased. Did you withdraw it? Yeah, I lent it to a friend who was in debt. Who is this friend you're helping by taking on their debt? That's none of your business. Brian said this dismissively, showing no signs of remorse. Moreover, it was strange that he frequently withdrew money in several installments to lend to his friend. That money was for Emma's future. So what? It's my money because the account is in my name. Stop complaining. That's not right. I work too and have been depositing money into that account. Shut up. Brian suddenly shouted and threw the remote control that was on the table. It flew swiftly past my face. What are you doing? That's dangerous. Being a wife, how dare you boss me around? You should just obey me. In his excitement, Brian wouldn't listen to anything I said. Our relationship continued to become strained. How did things come to this? What should I do? Concerns about how to deal with Brian crossed my mind, and the idea of reconciliation seemed difficult. One night, as I woke up late, I heard Brian talking to someone on his cell phone from the balcony. Looking forward to executing it on our wedding anniversary. I was astonished by the following conversation. Is this a joke? Feeling a deep sadness at how his love for me had cooled off, at the same time, I felt a boiling rage. The next day, having confirmed Brian's betrayal, I decided to open the computer he always used in his study. I remembered the password as I had borrowed it only once a long time ago. As I nervously checked the contents of the computer, it appeared that Brian was indeed having an affair, and there were numerous message exchanges with an unknown woman. I was shocked when the reality I had suspected was placed before my eyes. Furthermore, from those exchanges, I discovered Brian's shocking plan. So that's what it was. Well, I have a plan too. Having learned of Brian's plan, I devised a strategy. As expected, a few days before our wedding anniversary, Brian suddenly started being nice to me. For me, who had been subjected to verbal abuse from him, it felt disgustingly weird, and I realized that he was about to execute his plan and was making preparations. Our wedding anniversary is coming up. Oh, you remembered? Of course. It's an important anniversary for us. I've been having some problems at work lately, and I've been cold to you. I feel bad about that. As he made the obvious excuse, Brian was arching his eyebrows dramatically. Is that so? Maybe I haven't been considerate enough. I'm sorry. No, I appreciate you. Let's have a fun day on our wedding anniversary, just the family. I'm happy. Thank you. I'll make a feast. I was pretending to be deceived and acting happy, but I felt lonely. It would have been nice if this was true. I would have felt genuinely happy listening to my husband's words, and then the day of our wedding anniversary arrived. I prepared lots of dishes that Brian and Emma loved and waited.
Wow, it looks delicious. I can't wait for Daddy to come home.
Emma was overjoyed and danced while humming. I felt sorry for my happy daughter who didn't know what was about to happen. Eventually, Brian came home and presented me with a bouquet and a cake. It's not flashy, but I thought it's modest like you, so I chose it. Looking at the bouquet offered to me, my heart skipped a beat. Brian had made a good cover-up, but I knew that wasn't why he chose this flower. Could you put it in a vase right now? I understand. Thank you for the beautiful flowers. After arranging the flowers and having a pleasant meal, it was finally dessert time. The cake Brian bought was 3 kinds of cakes: chocolate, strawberry, and cheesecake. Seeing this, I intentionally spoke to my daughter. Hey Emma, I want to eat chocolate cake today. Could you let me have it?
But Emma always eats the chocolate. But okay, today I'll let you have it.
I did not miss Brian's sudden shudder as he heard our conversation.
Well, I'll have the cheesecake.
Emma, wait a second. When my daughter tried to take out the cake, my husband stopped her in a panic. He struggled to find a reason for his startled daughter. Well, the cheesecake seems to have a bit of alcohol in it. Emma should avoid it. The shop assistant told me so. Brian rushed to explain, quickly grabbing the strawberry cake before Emma or I could. His panic was almost comical. You're eating that? Yeah, I love strawberries. Huh, that's news to me, I responded. Meanwhile, Emma was elated, eagerly beginning to feast on her beloved chocolate cake. Upon seeing me select the cheesecake, Brian smirked and quickly devoured his portion. As I reached for my cake, he watched, swallowing hard. Hey, it's hard to eat when you're staring so much. Why don't you and Emma go bathe first? I want to savor my cake. Brian laughed it off and excused himself, taking Emma to the bath. All right, time to enjoy my cake, I announced audibly on purpose. When Brian emerged from the bath later and saw the remains of the eaten cheesecake, his face softened with relief. 10 minutes later, my chest hurts. Help me.
Mom, are you okay?
I began clutching my throat and collapsed on the dining room floor, feigning agony.
Papa, Mommy's foaming at the mouth and collapsed. Help!
A terrified Emma called to Brian, who was watching TV in the living room. Yet despite the sight of me suffering, Brian remained cold and said, Don't worry, just leave her.
Papa!
With that, he left the house, leaving a distraught Emma with a fallen me. I knew instantly where he was heading. Upon confirming that he had indeed left, I stood up, just as I thought. Seeing her mother recover from the pretend episode so quickly, Emma was taken aback.
Mom, are you okay?
Emma, sorry, it was a prank. With that jest, Emma broke into a mix of laughter and tears. One after I tucked Emma into bed, the sound of the front door opening echoed. When my husband came home, he called my daughter's name to the room where the lights had gone out. Emma, are you there? I've brought Mama medicine. It's going to be okay now. From the shadows, I quickly moved behind Brian, tapping his shoulder from behind. What do you mean it's going to be okay? Ah! Brian shrieked in shock, apparently dropping to the floor from the surprise. Why are you still alive? Catching himself, Brian hastily began to make excuses. No, when I saw you collapse, I ran outside to call for help, but there was no one, so I thought I'd go and buy some stomach medicine. I see, how kind of you. Right? I'm relieved to see you're feeling better. Seemingly under the impression he had successfully deceived me, his face relaxed. I was not fooled, however. You've got some nerve spewing such lies. So, where's this stomach medicine you bought? Did I forget it at the pharmacy? I could only shake my head at Brian's feeble attempts to lie his way out. And then, I silently pulled out my phone from my pocket and played a recorded audio file.
Soon I'll be together with you, and the money will come in. Is that flour really that dangerous? I need to make sure our daughter doesn't accidentally eat it.
Listening to this, my husband's face turned ashen. Where did you get this? About 2 weeks ago, you were talking to someone on the phone on the balcony late at night, remember? It was a suspicious conversation, so I immediately recorded it. But you ate the cake! You were foaming at the mouth and fell over. How? Of course, I wouldn't eat it knowing it was poisoned. I just pretended to eat it. I have kept the cake as evidence. The foam was meringue made from egg whites. I held up a cheesecake in a plastic bag to show him. You tricked me! It was you who tricked me, Brian. I knew all about your plan from checking your computer. Brian's plan was to present me with a bouquet and cake for our anniversary, pre-coat the cake with the poison from the flour, and attempt to take my life. It was a cunning plan where even if the police investigated, they could explain that the poison got into my mouth because I had handled the flowers when arranging them in the vase, and ate the cake without washing my hands. Suddenly, Brian approached me with the look of sheer malice. Hand over that evidence. Hold on. Even if you try something, it's nonsense. The police will be here soon, as I've already reported you. Plus, this room is under surveillance. Everything has been recorded. What? You're lying! Wait! Suddenly panicked, Brian clung to me in desperation. I'm sorry. I was persuaded by a woman. I didn't want to do it. Please tell the police that it was a misunderstanding. It's too late. But Emma is here. Are you okay leaving her without a father? It's better than her being with someone who would attempt to take a life. Please, I beg you, from now on, I'll be a good husband, a good father. Brian was now a pitiful sight, kowtowing with his forehead grinding on the floor, screaming while shedding tears and snot. But even seeing him like this, my heart didn't waver in the slightest. At that moment, the police arrived, and Brian was taken away, still screaming and crying. After that, both my husband and his mistress were found guilty of attempting to take my life. Of course, I divorced him, demanding $2,000 in damages and $10,000 in child support, which his parents kindly paid me. His family said they would make him work under strict surveillance and repay the money after he is released from prison. I also demanded $2,000 in damages from his mistress. Her parents paid me on her behalf, but I heard she was disowned. She was a new employee at Brian's company and was fired along with him. After paying for her crime, a difficult life awaits her. Emma and I have returned to my parents' house and are living a peaceful and happy life. To protect my daughter from getting hurt, I told her that her father went far away for work. Receiving all the love from me and my parents, my healthy growing daughter makes me want to continue raising her with all my might.
From today, I've decided to take care of Amy and Yuri. When my husband got back home, there were his sister and her child standing next to him. He has decided that we live with them together and support them. How could he prioritize his sister and niece over our own daughter and me? I can't stand it anymore. What a deadbeat husband. I will sump him myself. This is my vengeance story against my awful and despicable sister-obsessed husband. My name is Emilia. I've been married to Ethan for 5 years. We have a 4-year-old daughter, Luna. Our daughter, who we had right after our marriage, is adorable. She's our everything. My husband and my daughter, they're my precious family. But it seems like my husband did not feel the same. One evening, while waiting for my husband to return, I was cooking curry with Luna. Mommy, when is Daddy coming back? Daddy is late today. I wonder what happened. My husband, who usually comes straight home after work, but today didn't come back even after 7:30 p.m. No response to my calls or messages either. Mommy, I'm hungry. Yeah, all right. Let's go ahead and eat without Daddy today. After finishing dinner with my daughter and tidying up, my husband finally returned home. Welcome back. Wait, what? Beside Ethan, there were his sister Amy and her daughter Yuri. For some reason, they were carrying a ton of luggage. Ethan, what on earth? I was unable to process the situation. He then blurted out the unbelievable. From today, we're taking care of Amy and Yuri. What? Take care of these two? I don't understand. He could have said something before bringing them home. I could not wrap my head around this whole situation. I barely squeezed out my words. Support them? Why all of a sudden? I haven't heard anything about this. It was a sudden decision. What can I do? Amy had a fight with her husband. That's why she contacted me. Support? For how long? We don't even have any spare room in our apartment. Despite my subtle hints of inconvenience, my husband is unbothered. You can let them use your room, right? My room? You can move to Luna's room. Then we'll have a free room and Amy and Yuri can stay there. What the... My husband expects me to endure all this like it's nothing. Why do I have to put up with this when we're the one providing for them? I really don't understand. My husband, with a big smile, invited his sister and niece inside and kindly told them, "Feel free to make yourself at home from today." Without even a word of sorry to intrude, the two of them stepped in, settled themselves on the couch, started watching TV. I pulled my husband aside and whispered, "Hey, are you out of your mind? Taking care of these two all of a sudden? We don't quite have much room in our budget either, you know." My husband then sighed and made a disgusted face. "Geez, Amy's struggling and you're being so cold-hearted. Can't you at least help her out a little?" That's not it. I don't mind if they stay with us for a while, but to support them is a different story. At least they should contribute to the groceries. What? You're absolutely stingy. Amy's not working, so it's obvious she can't contribute. Calling me stingy. I don't care about your opinion. My precious sister is in trouble. As the head of the household, I've decided to support her, so you should obey me. Saying this, he went on to play games with them. Moreover, the curry I saved for tomorrow was completely eaten up by my husband and them. All the while, I was getting yelled at by my husband. "Prepare more nutritious meals for my niece." Has he ever cared about nutrition of our own daughter's meals? I see. He can be that caring of a person when it comes to his beloved niece. My husband completely sided with his sister and dismissed my feelings. Worse, he labeled me as a cheapskate for worrying about our finances. She can't contribute to the food expenses because she isn't working. That's not my problem. No matter how much they're struggling, it's not like we can afford to provide for them indefinitely for free. The following day, and the day after that, my husband only spoiled his sister and niece. He barely acknowledged me and our daughter. "Amy, I got the cake you said you wanted." "Oh, thanks, Ethan." "I saw some toys from Yuri's favorite cartoon on sale. Couldn't help but to buy them." "Wow, thanks, Uncle." The cake was only for his sister and niece, and of course, the toy was only for his niece. Our daughter and his niece are about the same age. It wouldn't be hard to guess that our daughter would also love some cake and toys. But I have to hold out a little longer. Once his sister makes up with her husband, they'll leave our house and our family life will return to normal. Telling myself that, I managed to suppress my anger. Then, one day, my daughter asked me, "Mom, does Dad like Yuri more than me?" "What?" "Because he's always nice only to Yuri. He doesn't even respond when I try to talk to him." Saying that, my daughter's eyes welled up with tears. I couldn't say anything, and I hugged my daughter tightly. Don't worry, he's your dad, Luna. Though I managed to calm her down for now, this can't go on. Some days later, I asked my husband to change his attitude. Luna's feeling left out. It's fine that you adore Yuri, but you have to spend time with Luna too. All right. It's such a hassle, though. A hassle? Our child is Luna, not Yuri, you know. Yes, I got it. I just have to pay attention to Luna, right? Although I told him about our daughter's feelings, the situation hasn't changed at all. My daughter looked at my husband, who was happily playing with our niece, with sad eyes. And it's not like my sister-in-law would take care of our daughter instead of my husband. My husband and my sister-in-law were always with Yuri. I was the only one who paid attention to our daughter, but she seemed lonely nonetheless. A whole month passed living with them, and my family was falling apart. We barely made ends meet. Moreover, no matter how much I cleaned up, our apartment had always been messy because my sister-in-law and niece never tidied up. My husband continued to spoil his sister and niece, disregarding my daughter and me. I couldn't bear this any longer. I finally confronted my husband. You've crossed the limit. I'm sick of it. Can you seriously think about our future? What are you up about? Out of nowhere. I've been saying this over and over, haven't I? Life's getting harder and harder, and what are you planning to do about Amy and her situation? You're not going to say that we're going to live together forever, are you? What can we do? She's currently arguing with her husband. Then, shouldn't she get a divorce or talk it out with her husband? It's already been a month, you know. Luna and I are at our limit. Please consider our feelings too. I knew that bringing up this topic would upset Ethan, but I had to do it for Luna and for our family's future. Luna loves you, you know. She sees her dad, who adores being nice only to his niece. Of course she's going to feel hurt. I emphasized Luna's feelings more than my own. Ethan's a father too, so he should understand how lonely Luna feels. He should change his attitude. But what came out of his mouth was a complete shocker. Amy is my sister, right? She's like a family to you too. How can you say such cold things? You're so heartless. Heartless? Me? I was shocked by his word. It's not that I dislike my sister-in-law and my niece. I just needed our current situation to change. But Ethan reacted as if I was the bad guy. I've always thought you were cold-hearted. Amy's in trouble, and Yuri's lonely without her dad, so of course I have to give them attention. You're there for Luna, so why can't you handle it? Whoa. Hold on. I'm taking care of all the household expenses. Why do Luna and I have to suffer? My salary's part of our family budget, you know. Well, of course. Amy is my sister. That makes her your family too, yet you're always saying cold things. Don't you feel embarrassed? Ethan shouted at me, blaming me entirely. He looked at me with cold eyes, clearly showing that his sister and his niece are more important for him than our daughter. Finally, he said something that made me doubt my ears. Amy wants to keep living here, so from now on, we'll be taking care of them. We're responsible for everything: food, clothing, and shelter. In that moment, all my hopes were gone. I was a fool to even have thought that he might understand if we talked. The old life will never come back to us. I squarely looked Ethan in the eyes and said, Fine, then let's get a divorce. Huh? My husband was making a face I'd never seen before. He probably did not understand what I had just said. After a long silence, he stared at me incredulously. Divorce? What the hell are you talking about all of a sudden? You're kidding, right? Do you really think I'd joke about something like this? If you're going to ignore mine and Luna's feelings, then I won't consider yours either. I'm going to make the best decision for Luna and us to be happy. probably never expected me to bring up divorce, he looked incredulous and scoffed at me. What are you talking about divorce? You couldn't possibly raise Luna on your own. Sure, single parenting is tough, but it's a hell of a lot better than continuing like this. If you're going to go that far, then go ahead and file for divorce. I'll even sign the papers. Just remember, if you change your mind later and say, I don't want a divorce after all, it's too late. Did he think I would back down? I pulled out the paper I had prepared earlier and handed it along with a pen to him. Seeing the divorce papers in front of him, he froze. He just stared at me, not making any move to fill them out. What's wrong? You're going to fill out the divorce papers, right? Oh, no. I forced him, who was visibly rattled, to hold the pen. Come on, fill it out. You said you would, didn't you? No, that was just a joke. What? A joke? After saying it's too late if you change your mind later? You dared me to divorce you, and now you're too scared to go through with it? Pathetic. Shut up! I'll fill it out, okay? After signing his part, he thrusted the paper at me. There, I signed it. Happy now? Get out! You're annoying! I calmly responded to him. No, you're the one who's leaving, okay? What? Huh? What do you mean, huh? Have you forgotten that this apartment is under my name? And ever since you started supporting your beloved sister, even with you chipping in, our living expenses weren't enough. And I was the one covering all the rent. Yet you still had the audacity to continue living here without any guilt. Are you stupid? Are you out of your mind? Suddenly, a voice cried out from behind. Wait a minute, what's going on here? Amy, my sister-in-law, ran towards Ethan and grabbed him by the collar. Ethan, what the hell is happening? You said we could stay here forever, right? So you were lying? Amy, no, this isn't... What do you mean this isn't? I trusted you because I thought you would keep us in your home forever. I can't believe you're kicking us out. I didn't think things would turn out like this either. Huh? You can't even deal with your own wife, can you? What did you say? I had enough of their nonsense bickering. I threw my sister-in-law and her children's belongings out onto the front door. Hey, wait! What do you think you're doing? Amy approached me in anger, but now that I decided to divorce Ethan, I felt no obligation to protect this woman. Just getting rid of someone else's belongings, that's all. Actually, you're trespassing. Can you leave as soon as possible? I told her in a quiet voice, causing Amy to shiver and step back. Hey, you don't have to throw out our stuff. And you, Ethan. I turned to my ex-husband. Could you please leave us as well? I have no need for you two anymore. What kind of thing is that to say to your husband? You're not my husband anymore. You're my ex-husband. I never thought you were such a cold-hearted woman. Well, that's too bad for you. You've stepped on my landmine. If you find your sister and her child cuter than our child, why don't the three of you happily live together? Where are we supposed to go if we leave here? Are you actually kicking us out? I don't care. Do whatever you want. Now get out. I'm going to call the cops if you don't. After confirming that my husband and his sister's family reluctantly left, I closed the house door. I probably won't see them again. Glancing around the room, I noticed my daughter looking at me with a puzzled expression. Mama? Where did Daddy go? I'm sorry, Luna. Do you think it's okay if it's just Mama and you from now on? Then my daughter showed a moment of hesitation, but her smile quickly returned. I'll be okay as long as Mama's here. I'm fine as long as I'm with you. She ran up to me and I hugged her tightly. That's right. Even without my husband, we will be fine. Surely the two of us can be happy. Later, I repeatedly shipped their belongings to my husband's parents' house and explained the situation over the phone. My husband and his sister's family seemed to have returned to their parents' house as expected. However, they seemed to have been disowned and kicked out of the house by their furious parents. As a result, my ex-husband rented a small apartment where he now lives with his sister and his niece as a family of 3. They probably wished for that, so I couldn't care less. I found out later that the reason my sister-in-law quarreled with her husband was due to her spending habits. Now, it seems she's being asked to repay the money she spent from her husband. Almost every day, my ex-husband has been sending me cringy texts. I was wrong, so forgive me. I love you and Luna the most. I want to get us back as a family. Of course, I didn't reply to any of them, and they were immediately thrown in the trash inbox. Luna doesn't want to see her dad at all, so we have no plans to meet him. I plan to move out of this place soon because I would be in trouble if we were to storm in here. For my daughter, I want to give her lots of love and everything in the world. Even without a father, I want her to live a happy life.
Huh? Mother-in-law? The doorbell rang, and I widened my eyes in surprise when I checked the monitor. No wonder, because on the screen was the image of my mother-in-law, who was supposed to be in the hospital. When I called my husband, he blatantly lied, saying,
I'm visiting my mom at the hospital.
At that point, I realized I'd been lied to by my husband. Unbelievable. Using his own family to deceive people. I'll make him regret making a fool out of me. I teamed up with my mother-in-law and decided to move out. And so, my story to get revenge with my mother-in-law began. My name is Jessica, 29 years old. After graduating from college, I started working for a company and got married at 27. My husband's name is Bob. I met him, who is the same age as me, through my friend Olivia. I happened to encounter Bob when I was having lunch with Olivia. Since Olivia worked at the same company as Bob, she introduced him to me. From there, we exchanged our number, went out to dine together a couple of times, and started dating. After a year of dating, we happily tied the knot. Even after 2 years of marriage, we're still happily married. We're more like friends than lovers, so we say whatever we think, for better or worse, without holding back. As we were having dinner, he teased me a bit by saying,
Jessica, today's stew. Isn't it a bit bland?
You think so? I also thought it was a bit bland too when I tasted it.
Jess, you've been a housewife for 2 years now, but you're still bad at cooking, aren't you?
Stop it. If you're gonna say things like that, then why don't you cook, Bob?
Sorry. Thanks for cooking always, even though you have your job too. I appreciate it, okay?
I guess I'll forgive you, but next time, take me to that fancy restaurant for dinner, okay?
All right. You're always so upbeat about these things. It's a bit troublesome, you know.
Even though we bicker like this, we never forget to show gratitude towards each other. That's how we roll. We do at times get into arguments, but I still loved Bob. Then one day, I received a text from Bob, who had been working overtime for consecutive days, saying,
I think I can come home early today.
We hadn't been able to have dinner together for a while. Today seemed like a day we could spend time together. Just as I was about to finish cooking, my phone rang. Hello? The first thing my husband did was apologize in a regretful voice.
I'm sorry, Jess. I won't be able to come home after all today.
What? But today, for the first time in a while, you said you would come home early.
Well, I thought so too, but I am far from getting my work done.
I see. I went through all the trouble to make dinner, but I guess it can't be helped.
I'm really sorry. I'll make it up to you, I promise.
Bob apologized over and over again. I can't blame him when he's this sorry. It can't be helped if it's because of work. I took the opportunity to ask him something that had been bothering me for a while. Hey, Bob, I feel like you've been working overtime a lot recently.
Huh, is that so? I feel like it's always been this way since a long time ago.
But you used to do it once a week, right? But lately it's practically every day.
I can't help it, can I? It's not like I want this myself.
My usually calm husband raised his voice in a rare display of anger. He seemed desperate. Something was definitely suspicious. For some reason, that was my intuition. As he hurried to hang up the phone, I held him back and asked him again, Bob, I hate to ask this, but you're really at work, right?
What's with that question? Of course I am. Don't tell me you think I'm cheating.
Why would you think that? I didn't say anything about cheating.
Well, that's because you sound like you're doubting me, Jessica.
My fault. All I did was ask if it's really work.
Anyway, can we drop it now? I still have work to do, so don't bother me.
With that, he abruptly hung up the phone. I couldn't help but sense his reluctance to be probed any further. What's with his attitude? Would someone normally get so angry just by being asked if it's work? Doesn't he have something he wants to hide? Thinking I couldn't get any further over the phone, I decided to wait for him to come home. When he got home a few hours later, he was in a very bad mood. He completely ignored my attempts to talk to him. Not only that, he went straight to bed without even touching the dinner I had prepared. From that day on, our relationship worsened. The fun conversations of the past were gone, and we only communicated on a bare minimum basis. At first, I was sad, but gradually, I began to notice something. My husband is hiding something. If he truly had nothing to hide, there's no need for him to be so flustered. His blatantly cold attitude in the past few days started after I began suspecting him of overtime. If this situation continues, we'll have to have a proper discussion. Just when I was beginning to think about this, a shocking situation arose. One day, when I was thinking about when to have a discussion, he got home from work and casually mentioned,
Oh, by the way, my mom's been hospitalized.
What? Your mom? Why all of a sudden?
Well, because she's sick.
But your mom, she was so energetic. As I hurried to call my mother-in-law.
Wait.
He stopped me. What? I was just about to call your mom. I was briefly taken aback by his loud voice, but I stopped and asked him.
Mom's really weak now. She's probably not up for phone calls, and it seems she's mentally struggling too, so let's hold off.
That bad? Then at least let me visit her.
No, I'll go visit her alone this weekend.
Alone? Why?
Because Mom asked me to.
Your mom asked? According to my husband, apparently my mother-in-law is in such a bad state that it's uncertain whether she'll even be up for visits. She doesn't want to show me her weakened state, so she's requested that only my husband visit her. To be honest, I owe a lot to my in-laws, especially my mother-in-law, who's been treating me like her own daughter ever since our marriage was settled. On top of that, she loves to travel and always brings back souvenirs. The house that we're living in now was given to us by her. Apparently, it was originally inherited from her parents and had been vacant for some time. She gave it to us at the time of our marriage. I have this house that I live in with your father, and it would be a waste if no one lived here, she said, and gave us the house while still retaining the title. She is even still paying the property taxes. I'm worried about my mother-in-law's health, and ideally, I'd like to visit her right away. However, if she prefers only family visits, I should respect her wishes. So, although a bit frustrated, I listened and decided to refrain from visiting her. On Friday night, as scheduled, my husband went to visit my mother-in-law. Her place is only about an hour drive away, but he's planning on staying there until Sunday. Bob was in a good mood that day and seemed a bit giddy.
Sorry about going alone,
he said at the front door as he was leaving. No, it can't be helped. It's what mother-in-law wants.
My mother's condition could take a turn for the worse at any time, so I'll be on standby at my parents' house until then. I think I'll be back on Sunday night.
I see. Her condition is that severe.
Well, just don't call or text her, okay? I don't want her to get upset again.
I understand. I'll go visit her next time, when her body calms down.
Okay, I got it. I'm leaving now.
Yes, take care. It's not that far away, and we could go directly to the hospital from here. I wonder why he needs to stay at his parents' house. But, thanks to that, I can take action. At this time, I sensed that my husband was hiding something, and I planned to investigate while he was away. I might find something if I look at his phone, but he always has his phone on him. So I decided to check his computer that we have at home. After confirming that he had left, I headed to the bedroom where his computer was. I had a good idea of his password, and I was able to get in easily. All right, I need to find something that can serve as a clue. As I was about to open a folder from the desktop, the doorbell rang and I stopped. Who is it? At a time like this, I'm in the middle of an important mission. Still, with my husband away, I have no choice but to respond. I widened my eyes in surprise when I saw the monitor, because the person supposed to be in the hospital, my mother-in-law, was standing there. Mother-in-law? Despite being puzzled by the sight of my energetic mother-in-law on the screen, I opened the front door. Then mother-in-law said cheerfully, "Long time no see. Mother-in-law, why are you here?" "I came for a surprise today." "A surprise? What are you talking about? Today is your birthday, isn't it, Jessica?" "Ah, now that you mention it. I actually talked it over with Bob first, you know. He told me it'd be a nuisance if I just showed up out of the blue. But I really wanted to celebrate, so I came without telling him." My mother-in-law's words made me realize that today was my birthday. Lately, I've been so preoccupied with my husband that I haven't had any time to think about my own birthday. Amidst all this, my mother-in-law came all the way to celebrate with me. I was simply overjoyed by her consideration. But before that, there was a pressing question that needed to be addressed. Why was my mother-in-law, who was supposed to be in the hospital, here? No matter how I looked at it, she didn't seem seriously ill and appeared to be her usual lively self. I hesitantly asked her, Mother-in-law, are you feeling okay?" "Feeling okay? As you know, Jessica, being in good health is my forte." "But you were supposed to be admitted into the hospital." Upon hearing that, my mother-in-law looked surprised and exclaimed, "Admittance to the hospital?" "Bob told me Mom's going to be hospitalized." "I'm going to be hospitalized? What on earth is he talking about?" "And today, he left the house saying he was going to visit you in the hospital." "A visit? But I'm not hospitalized." "Yes, he told me you might take a turn for the worse, so he'll be staying at his parents' house until Sunday." "Jessica, could you wait a minute?" My mother-in-law took out her cell phone and started calling her husband. After a few minutes, she hesitantly began to speak again. "I just asked your father, and it seems Bob isn't coming after all, and no one in the family is hospitalized." So Bob was lying after all. "After all? What do you mean?" "Oh, no, it's just... Jessica, you have to tell me." Under the intense gaze of my mother-in-law, I couldn't bear to hold it in any longer, and confessed everything to her. As we investigated his computer together, we found a photo of him and his mistress inside one of the folders. Perhaps fearing that he would be caught if they used iMessage, there were many records of texts with his mistress saved in his email folder. When his infidelity came to light, I was left speechless by the shock. My mother-in-law also seemed to be trembling slightly, perhaps out of anger. From their email exchanges, it was revealed that today was supposed to be a trip with his mistress. I felt no sadness anymore. I was filled with rage. I couldn't believe he would use his family as an alibi for his infidelity. My mother's hospitalized, gonna pay a visit. Cut the crap. I'll never forgive him for lying so casually for the sake of his affair. Determined to get revenge, I called my husband to confirm his infidelity. "Hello?" Hearing his calm response, I suppressed my anger and asked, "Bob, where are you right now?"
Huh? I'm visiting Mom at the hospital. Didn't I tell you this morning?
"So, you're with mother-in-law right now?"
Like I said, yes. Sorry, but I'm in the hospital, so I have to hang up now.
I was convinced my husband was cheating when he straight hung up on me. Now, what should I do? While I was worrying about this, my mother-in-law came up with a great idea. "Hey, Jessica, how about moving out? Now that it's come to this." "Moving out, you say? This house is under my name. Who lives here and what to do with my house? I have the sole right over this place, not Bob." "Mother-in-law, don't worry. I will always protect you." Thus, as my mother-in-law suggested, I decided to move out. I quickly packed my belongings and ended up staying at my in-laws for the time being. A few days later, I got a call from my husband, who must have just returned from his cheating trip. Hello? Then my husband started grilling me with an incredible intensity.
Hey, Jessica, what's going on here?
What do you mean?
It's the house. Why are your things gone?
Why? Because I moved out.
You moved out? What kind of joke is this?
It's not a joke. Do you know where I am right now? To my perplexed husband, I conveyed the fact. You know where I am. I'm at your parents' home.
Ha! At my parents' home. Why?
Your mother suggested it. She said, I'm going to sell that house, so stay here until you find a new one.
Mom? Why?
Yeah, right. In Bob's mind, your mother is in the hospital, isn't she?
So that is...
I told him that my mother-in-law had visited the house, that it was already revealed that my mother-in-law's hospitalization was a lie, and that I already had evidence of his cheating. My husband, realizing that everything's been revealed, started to apologize spontaneously, as if he finally understood the situation he was in.
I'm sorry. I didn't actually have a serious relationship. It was just a fling. Just a fling.
Ha! A fling?
Yes, that's right. The one I love is you, Jessica. I have no intention of getting a divorce, so please, I won't do it anymore, so forgive me.
I'm disgusted with my husband, who easily lines up such convenience phrases. As if to vent all of my resentment, I spat out coldly. Forgive you? Don't be ridiculous. You even lied that your family was hospitalized and cheated on me. Whether it was serious or not doesn't matter. I'm pissed off that you used your mother to cheat on me.
Jessica, I didn't mean to.
Don't make excuses. The fact that you cheated is real. That won't change. I will never forgive you. I'm going to make you pay alimony. If you understand, never contact me again, you scumbag. After hanging up the phone, I set his contact to block caller. Afterward, my husband paid a visit to his parents' house, but my in-laws promptly showed him the door. He was disowned, cut off from his biological parents. After the divorce was finalized, he rented a low-cost apartment, and I hear he's having a tough time making ends meet. Meanwhile, I enlisted a lawyer to sue him and his mistress for emotional distress. With solid evidence at hand, I managed to get them to pay up. Turns out, his mistress was a newbie at their workplace. The whole office was abuzz with their story, leading the mistress to quit from sheer embarrassment. And my husband has been getting the cold shoulder from his co-workers, too. It's only a matter of time before he quits his job. He's flat broke after paying the emotional distress damages, and I wonder how he's going to survive in his already dire financial situation. I doubt there's a bright future waiting for him. Well, it's none of my business anymore. As for me, I recently managed to move into a new place. When I was leaving my in-laws' home, my mother-in-law said this to me. Jessica, dear, you're welcome to visit us anytime, okay? I truly appreciate everything you've done for me. It's all right, dear. You're my precious daughter after all. Mother-in-law, thank you. I may have parted ways with my husband, but my relationship with my mother-in-law is still good. I hope to gradually repay my mother-in-law for her kindness.
I came here to protect my father-in-law and mother-in-law. How long is Jennifer going to rely on her parents? There's nothing good about mooching off your family home for employment. Please leave immediately. I was momentarily stunned by the sight of my sister-in-law, Kate, pointing at the door and fuming. Then my anger started to build, distorting my face. Kate was trying to kick me out of my family home while hiding her own actions. I couldn't let that slide. My name is Jennifer. I work as a web writer while living at home. I've been blogging since college and it's become a source of income. I love writing, so I pitched my blog to my favorite websites and got hired as a web writer. I had been working from home, living alone in an apartment since my college days until a few years into my career. Then, my dad got into a car accident and became wheelchair-bound. My dad, who's always been upbeat and positive, quickly learned how to operate an electric wheelchair and continued to live happily. However, our family home wasn't wheelchair-friendly. Since I had no desire to get married, I suggested moving in with my parents. They agreed, so I promptly bought a new home. I chose a unit in what's called a luxury apartment building. The reason? It's connected to a train station and shopping mall, and it's a barrier-free environment, making it easier for my dad to get around. My parents loved the new home, and I felt great about being able to do something good for them. We were enjoying peaceful days together until my brother John's marriage turned everything upside down. Kate, the woman John married, was someone he met at a bar. Tall and stunningly beautiful, Kate seemed out of reach for my inexperienced brother. John was thrilled to have made it to marriage with someone like her. My parents and I genuinely celebrated their wedding, as Kate had always acted polite and sensible. But after the wedding, Kate started visiting our home more frequently. "Your home is really lovely. The view is always so beautiful, I'm jealous." Kate would always say this while looking out the window. We didn't intentionally choose a high floor, but at the time of purchase, only the top floor was available. Kate seemed very envious of this and started visiting uninvited every 3 days, which honestly bothered me. I have a workspace in the house, and Kate would barge into my room without hesitation. Whenever she saw me at my computer, she'd say, "Playing around again. Looks fun," making snide comments when my parents couldn't hear. I had told Kate that I earned my living as a web writer and blogger, but she retorted, "There's no way you could afford such a nice house doing that. I'm not fooled, you know." Apparently, Kate isn't familiar with the online world. She seemed unaware that some bloggers and web writers live in even nicer homes and travel the world while working. So to Kate, it looked like I was just another person financially dependent on their parents. At first, Kate hid her true colors, but she gradually changed. She complained about me living at home while trying to win my parents over by helping with household chores. Especially towards my dad, Kate's behavior was commendable. Before marrying my brother, she had worked in caregiving, and she was attentive to the small inconveniences my dad might feel. Naturally, my dad was grateful to her, and if my dad was grateful, my mom also appreciated Kate. Despite it being my home, I increasingly felt like my place was being taken away. Then, one day, something about Kate's outfit caught my eye. As she was chatting amiably with my dad, I couldn't help but ask. I rarely initiated conversations with Kate, who I already disliked. So she seemed surprised and asked, "What is it?" "Are those clothes for men? They're from a famous brand, aren't they?" I had a friend who wore that same brand. He was a guy and had proudly shown off his expensive new shirt to me. After a moment of surprise, Kate said, "I like men's clothing too," with a forced smile. Wondering why she would react like that, I caught her glaring at me. "What's the matter? Is it wrong for me to wear men's clothing?" Her sudden change startled my dad, and my mom, who was sipping coffee a little distance away, froze. I was used to Kate's sharp glares, so I calmly replied, "No, it's nothing." Angrily, Kate declared, "If you're going to be suspicious, then fine, I'm leaving," and abruptly stormed out. My parents were shaken, not understanding why she was so angry, but I had a bad feeling. A few days later, I was relaxing in the living room, playing a game on TV after barely meeting a work deadline. I felt someone's gaze and turned around in surprise. There stood Kate, her face livid. In our home, I am the one who answers the intercom. My old-fashioned parents aren't comfortable with the camera-equipped intercom, so they call for my help whenever it rings while I'm home. So there is no way I wouldn't notice if the intercom rang. Our apartment has an auto-lock system, and you have to unlock 2 doors to get in. I always lock the door out of habit, so there is no chance I forgot. Shocked, I blurted out, "How did you get in?" Kate replied, "I made a duplicate key with John's. You never know when Jennifer might do something terrible to her parents. I've never done anything to harm my parents. While I'm not the most considerate person, I've never done anything so bad that Kate would need to make a spare key to burst in at any moment. My parents, who noticed Kate's arrival, were also surprised that she had entered the house on her own. When they asked her how she got in, she gave the same answer she gave me. My parents exchanged glances, and my dad defended me, saying, "Jennifer would never do something terrible. We're only grateful to her." But Kate loudly denied it. "No! Jennifer is already doing something terrible. She's living off of her parents' money. Aren't you ashamed to be playing games in the middle of the day?" I frowned at her sudden tirade. I had been consulting with my brother about Kate, and I thought she should be the one feeling ashamed. But her rant continued. "I came here to protect my father-in-law and mother-in-law. How long is Jennifer going to rely on her parents? There's nothing good about mooching off your family home for employment. Please leave immediately." I was momentarily stunned by Kate, who was pointing at the door and fuming. Then my anger started to build, distorting my face. Kate must think I've discovered her secret. That's why she's trying to kick me out and cover it up. Just as I was about to speak, my brother walked into the living room. We were all surprised by his unexpected appearance, and he looked angrier than either of us. "What's going on here?" he shouted, pulling something out of his bag and scattering it. The pictures showed Kate walking arm in arm with a man who wasn't my brother, even kissing him on the street. Kate's face turned pale as she frantically gathered the photos, muttering, What is this? What is this?" The issue my brother had consulted me about was Kate's affair. She had been acting strangely lately. Despite being a home worker, she was going out every day and coming home late. She told my brother she was coming to our house every day to help with my dad's care, but she only showed up every 2 or 3 days. The answer to where she was going on other days was captured in the photos. My mom was trembling with anger as she looked at the photos, and then my dad quietly spoke. "Should we move out then?" "What?" "Kate wants this house, doesn't she? I appreciate her being kind to me, but I've noticed she's got her eye on this place. She's been secretly measuring rooms, hasn't she? Even asked my wife if the mortgage was fully paid off. The house might be too big for one person, but Jennifer would probably rent it out. Live alone? I was planning to move in here with John. You think I can stay with a wife who's kissing another man? No way." "Wait, it was just a fling. You are the one I love. Please forgive me." Kate clung to my brother, but he shoved her hand away, saying, "Don't touch me, you're filthy." Tears started to flow from Kate's eyes. Her face looked even more eerie because she was pretty. I thought to myself, what a scary face, as Kate directed her anger at me. "What's the deal? I thought if I kicked you out, no one would know about my affair. It's all your fault. Get out." Kate was panicking, probably not even understanding half of what she was saying. My dad was right. She wanted to take over the house. But today she suddenly switched tactics, telling me to get out because I had commented on the men's shirt she was wearing. Turns out she got that shirt from her affair partner after spilling pasta sauce on her clothes during a date. I couldn't understand why she'd wear such a shirt to her in-laws' house, but that's why she was trying to kick me out. My brother announced he would never forgive Kate and would divorce her, demanding compensation. Starting today, I am living here. The one who needs to leave is Kate. John had decided to move back into our family home, saying he couldn't live with Kate after being cheated on. My parents didn't object to him coming back. Kate kept apologizing to John as she cried, but he mercilessly kicked her out. He then apologized to me and our parents. We all comforted him as he cried, ashamed for marrying such a woman. Kate seemed to have moved back to the house she shared with my brother, but he planned to terminate the lease that month. He met with Kate to retrieve the spare keys to our house and told her never to come back. Kate ended up having to pay a large sum in compensation. She sought help from her wealthy affair partner, but my brother had also demanded compensation from him. It seemed their relationship was indeed just a fling, and the affair partner was furious at being dragged into this. He refused to help Kate. She had almost depleted her pre-marriage savings on dates with her affair partner and lost all her savings paying the compensation. Now she's working a physically demanding job that comes with a dormitory. My brother told me she's so busy she barely has time to sleep, but as far as I'm concerned, it's just retribution for hurting my brother. John moved into our family home and was going through a rough patch for a while, but it seems like a guardian angel of a woman reached out to him. He was at his favorite bar, drowning his sorrows when he started crying, thinking about how Kate had cheated on him. This woman quietly offered him a handkerchief. They had never spoken before, but she was also a regular at the same bar. She later confessed, "I had my reasons for giving you the handkerchief, but it's clear she genuinely loves my brother." When Kate found out that John had found a much kinder and wonderful partner, she was reportedly sobbing. Kate, who was always confident in her looks, was under the delusion that my brother would want to get back together with her. It's astonishing how shameless some people can be. John's new fiancé understands my freelance work and even praises me for being able to afford a luxury apartment. I can't say I mind the compliments. Given that my brother's ex was Kate, I was able to quickly accept this woman as a part of our family. Kate had tried to take over our home and hurt John, but now he's found happiness. We're all looking forward to a brighter future. My father, mother, and I have returned to our peaceful lives now that Kate is gone. My dad, who Kate used to fuss over, actually felt smothered by her and is now living more freely. I thought I had been inconsiderate in taking care of my dad, so hearing his confession was a relief. The three of us in the family now appreciate the peacefulness of our daily lives, cherishing each day's happiness, especially when my brother and his wife come to visit.
My name is Adeline. I grew up with my dad and mom, just the three of us. Recently, I decided to marry Philip, my boyfriend, and move out of the home I grew up in. I met Philip through mutual friends. He works for a well-known company in town and is often considered a top-notch professional. He's very responsible and kind. My parents were thrilled when they learned I'd be marrying him. With my marriage, Mom seemed relieved that her years of parenting were coming to an end. It was as if this gave her the chance to refocus on her own life. Since I started elementary school, Mom has been working as a chef at a nursing home. Cooking is her passion. Sometimes she would even serve her creative dishes at the nursing home she worked at. I've heard stories about how the residents eagerly awaited her meals every day. That's how delicious her cooking was. Praise never got to her head. She took cooking classes and was always learning. Mom had always been diligent about following her dream. Her dream was to have her own restaurant one day. Seeing people smile while eating her dishes brought her immense joy. She often said, "I'd love to serve my dishes in a small restaurant when I'm older." Though she said it might remain just a dream, there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. But then a twist of fate changed everything. Around the time I moved out after my wedding, unexpected news came Mom's way. She and Dad would often dine at a bar run by her friend's elderly parents. It was a quaint place with lovely conversations, meticulously prepared dishes, and select drinks that Mom always raved about. But due to their old age and declining health, they decided to close the bar. It was in such a prime location, too good to be left unused. When they thought of renting it out to someone, Mom's name was the top of the list. They believed that with her culinary skills and lovely personality, she would cherish and take care of the place. After discussions, they decided they wanted to pass the bar on to Mom. When Mom heard this, she was taken aback by the suddenness of it all. However, opportunities like this might never come again. She seemed to understand that if she missed this one, there might not be another. Mom decided to take over the bar from her friend's parents and start her own place. Dad was all for it, and they worked together to create their dream bar. When their dream was finally becoming a reality, Mom was ecstatic. She paid attention to every little detail to ensure no regrets. Seeing the happiness on Mom's face, I felt sure the bar would be a hit. A few months later, everything was set to open. Mom's bar is a quaint spot that opens in the evening. There isn't a fixed menu. Instead, she serves the best items she gets her hands on that day, presenting them as creative cuisine. It felt like a great idea packed with Mom's dreams. Initially, I was worried about whether customers would come, but there was no need for concern. Mom's bright and sociable nature quickly drew in regulars. Above all, it was Mom's cooking that brought the rave reviews, and word of mouth soon spread. Most of the customers were locals, but passers-by would also stop by and have a good time. The homely atmosphere was a hit, and the bar was busy every day. I visited the bar with Philip once. Philip loved Mom's dishes, and he made a suggestion. "The food is truly delicious. Would you consider using our vegetables?" Philip's family owned a greengrocer. Having been in the business locally for a long time, they had a wide network and offered fresh produce. Philip proposed a contract between Mom's bar and his family's greengrocer. Fresh harvest grocers, right? That's a generous offer. I'd love to. With the contract, she'd get a regular supply of quality ingredients. Mom was thrilled at the prospect of making even better dishes. Soon enough, Mom and Philip's dad discussed the details over the phone, and a formal contract was agreed upon. Once everything was settled, a delivery of vegetables from Philip's family was sent over. All of them were vibrant and fresh. It was clear they were top quality. It might cost more than the supermarket, but serving such great produce will surely make the customers happy. Mom always prioritized seeing the smiles of her customers over profit. "I'm glad you like them." Seeing Mom content with the vegetables, Philip grinned, looking slightly embarrassed. Then one day, Mother-in-law visited Mom's store. Interesting. Without any greetings, she looked around as if assessing the place. It had been a while since they met during a formal introduction for the marriage, so Mom honestly didn't know much about her character. Despite feeling a bit annoyed by Mother-in-law's scrutinizing look, Mom greeted her warmly. "Oh, you're Philip's mother, right? Welcome. We really value and use the vegetables you supply." "Thanks," was all Mother-in-law replied, avoiding eye contact and frowning. Not understanding the sour expression, Mom offered her some water. "Here's some water. I'll prepare a meal for you shortly. Please take a seat." However, Mother-in-law stopped her with a gesture. "No need. I just came to check out the place today. I was concerned whether our family's produce was properly being used in such a small establishment." Stunned by her arrogant attitude, Mom was at a loss for words. "Seems like you have a good reputation here. That's nice," Mother-in-law said with a sly grin. Mom just listened in silence. "Well, it appears you're using our veggies properly. It would be a problem if you weren't. Oh, since I'm here, how about I book for 50 people? As you can see, this is a small place, and I don't think we can accommodate 50 people." After making several snide remarks, she now proposed an impractical reservation. The eatery, with a few tables and counter seats, couldn't possibly fit 50 people. "You think this tiny space can handle a big crowd? Then let's see your cooking skills. Pack them into lunchboxes. I'll order 50 for next Friday's lunch. Can you handle that?" The mother-in-law's taunting challenge seemed to ignite Mom's fighting spirit. "Lunchboxes it is. I can definitely make 50 by next Friday." With that reply, the mother-in-law left with a sour look on her face. While Mom had confidently accepted the challenge, she had never prepared such a large order before. I decided to lend a hand, knowing it'd be quite the task for one person. But Mom was so skilled. I often felt she didn't even need my help. I just focused on packing the food so it looked as appetizing as possible. Before we knew it, we had only 10 minutes left to the mother-in-law's pickup time. We managed to create vibrant, tasty lunchboxes on time. This has to be perfect. I put my all into it. There's no way she can complain now. Mom looked really proud of her accomplishment. She had probably been planning the recipes for this day. I noticed several detailed recipe notes pinned up in the kitchen. Clearly, she was very dedicated to this task. But as soon as the noon hour approached, there was no sign of the mother-in-law. After waiting for 30 minutes past the pickup time, I called her to check in. "Hello, we have the lunchboxes ready. Will you be coming to pick them up? If you're busy, we can deliver them for you." What she said next was utterly shocking. Oh dear, I completely forgot about the lunchboxes. I already had my lunch. Just cancel my order. Wait, we've already made them. We can't cancel now. At least pay for the cost? You can't be serious. Family shouldn't charge for cancellations. Anyway, I'm busy. She had not only forgotten her order, but now refused to pay. I was stunned, lost for words, when she abruptly hung up. Heartbroken, I told Mom about the conversation. She looked devastated. I should have taken payment up front, and accepting an order for $50 was unrealistic. I shouldn't have let her provoke me. Mom seemed deeply upset by the hard work she put into those lunchboxes. It's not Mom's fault. She simply kept her promise and made the order as requested. It's mother-in-law who's in the wrong here. It felt such a waste to dispose of these wonderful lunchboxes. Hoping against hope, I decided to call Philip. "Philip, I'm sorry to disturb you at work." "No worries, it's almost lunchtime anyway. What's up?" "Since it's almost lunchtime, I have a favor to ask." "What happened?" "Well, mother-in-law had placed an order for 50 lunchboxes today, but she canceled at the last minute. I didn't want them to go to waste, so I was wondering if anyone at your office would want them." Hearing this, Philip let out a deep sigh. "Ugh, I can't believe it. I'm really sorry for the trouble Mother has caused. She's always been like this. We'll sell all those lunchboxes at my company. Can you bring them over?" I could detect the anger in Philip's voice. "Thank you. It's such a waste to throw them away. We can give them out for free, and if there are any leftovers, you can bring them back home." As promised, I delivered the lunchboxes to Philip's office. Mom, still reeling from the lunch incident, felt too upset to continue with the evening shift. As she saw customers outside looking at the "closed for today" sign, she seemed even more downcast. At that moment, Philip, having finished work, hurried over. "Mother-in-law, I deeply apologize for the inconvenience my mother caused." "There's no need for you to apologize, Philip. Please, look up." Philip, still with his head down, continued his tale. "Actually, Mom, mother-in-law was jealous of your shop. She envied you because she couldn't do it herself. I never imagined she'd go this far to harass you. I'm truly sorry." Mom was taken aback, unaware that mother-in-law felt this way about her. Mother-in-law was envious because people liked Mom, and she even opened up her own store. Unlike Mom, mother-in-law wasn't good with people. She often had conflicts with others, leading to multiple incidents in the past. She always resented those who seemed better off than her, spreading rumors and even getting into altercations. Every time she caused trouble, Father and I stepped in, but this time, it's unforgivable. Philip contacted father-in-law and asked him to bring mother-in-law to the store. Shortly after reaching out, father-in-law, almost dragging mother-in-law, arrived at the shop. "I apologize for my wife's selfish actions. We will cover all the expenses. Apologize, now!" Father-in-law urged mother-in-law. However, mother-in-law sulked and pouted. "You don't need to pay. Philip sold all the lunchboxes at his office, thankfully, so we didn't end up at a loss." Mom declined their offer. Upon hearing this, mother-in-law exploded in anger. "Using your son like that? Just because you own a store doesn't mean you're above everyone." Mother-in-law's face turned red as she shouted. Philip was supposed to stay with us. This is so infuriating. The sight of mother-in-law shouting in blind rage was unsettling. Father-in-law tried his best to calm her down, but she was beyond control. Just then, a regular customer, noticing the commotion, walked in. The customer recognized that the disruptor was the Fresh Harvest grocer's mother-in-law. With father-in-law, the customer helped restrain mother-in-law. Watching this unfold, a distressed mom stood up and addressed mother-in-law sternly. I can't tolerate you causing a scene and bothering our customers. You act all high and mighty for such a small store. At mother-in-law's words, mom's anger exploded. Who do you think you are, acting all high and mighty? If you feel that way, fine. I'll end our business agreement with your store. What? Wait, what did you just say? Did you not hear me? I said I'm ending our agreement with your store. As mom declared this, father-in-law immediately became frantic. No, anything but that. Father-in-law desperately didn't want to sever the business contract with mom. In truth, the business of Fresh Harvest Grocers, which had been running for many years and stocked fresh vegetables, had been declining year by year. Though Fresh Harvest Grocers provided quality produce, they weren't meeting the community's needs. Recently, the number of apartments and single individuals, including students, had grown in the area. Additionally, several big supermarkets had started to emerge. With more people looking to buy cheaper vegetables at supermarkets, Fresh Harvest Grocers saw a gradual decline in customers. Despite Fresh Harvest Grocers' widespread reputation, they couldn't sell a large variety of veggies at low prices like major supermarkets. Therefore, having small businesses like mom's continuously purchasing vegetables was something father-in-law greatly appreciated. Terminating that contract was the last thing father-in-law, the business owner, wanted. I beg you, please, reconsider the contract. I'll talk to my wife about her behavior. Why does it matter? It's just a small store like mine. You always act like this! It's because of that attitude that we've lost customers! You need to reflect on your actions! Not only was mother-in-law rude to mom, but she was also often curt with other customers. She sometimes made unnecessary comments, leading some customers to feel uncomfortable, and decide not to return to Fresh Harvest Grocers. To think you can't even understand when it's spelled out for you! And to behave this way towards Philip's mother-in-law? It's unforgivable! Mother, Adeline, I deeply apologize for my wife's rudeness. Biting his lip and holding back his emotions, father-in-law grabbed mother-in-law's arm and left the store. Mother-in-law never apologized to mom in the end. Later on, Philip visited mom's store with a big smile on his face. Anything good happen? Well, my parents got divorced. Since mother left, the customers have been returning, and the business is slowly stabilizing. It feels like a troublemaker is gone. Father-in-law, fed up with mother-in-law's lack of remorse, decided to divorce. But mother-in-law didn't accept the divorce easily. She impulsively initiated divorce mediation, but in court, she only made self-centered remarks. She rudely addressed the family mediation committee, which put her at a disadvantage in the mediation she started. She had no allies, and the divorce was easily granted. Father-in-law seemed relieved that the divorce didn't take much effort. Now, he has no contact with his ex-mother-in-law, and their relationship is completely severed. Now, without mother causing any more trouble, I can't stand causing you any more inconvenience. Philip seemed to feel a weight lifted, recalling all the past troubles with mother-in-law. Philip, I'm looking forward to our continued relationship. Mom was carefully prepping the vegetables from Fresh Harvest Grocers. In reality, she hadn't terminated the contract and continued to buy from them. No matter how bad mother-in-law's attitude was, Mom genuinely loved the produce from Fresh Harvest Grocers. The tasty vegetables were popular with customers, enhancing the reputation of Fresh Harvest Grocers. Because of this, some regular patrons specifically came for their produce. Promoting Fresh Harvest Grocers, Mom's store became very significant for father-in-law. Moreover, there was more good news. The lunchboxes sold to Philip's company were a hit among employees, leading to more requests. Thanks to that, Mom began selling lunchboxes at noon. The nutritionally balanced lunchboxes were popular, especially among younger locals. With good sales and affordable pricing, nothing was left unsold. She also received bulk orders from Philip's large company, and though busy, Mom joyfully cooked. Years later, her shop still thrived. She could afford to hire part-time workers, easing her burden. A woman, fond of Mom's cooking, came to apprentice. I never thought I'd become a master. It's embarrassing to call myself that. Fulfilling her dream of having her own shop, Mom's next dream was to sustain it. She thought of entrusting her dream to this woman. As Mom adeptly taught the apprentice, she indeed looked like a master chef. I want to keep enjoying Mom's cooking, so I wholeheartedly support her dream of continuity for her shop.
My name is Lisa. I'm 25 years old and work as an administrative assistant in a mid-sized company. I was born out of my father's affair. Until I was 5, I didn't know this. I was raised thinking that my father's legal wife, Sarah, who was my primary caregiver, was my real mother. Sarah couldn't bear children due to her weak health, and she took in my father's illegitimate child, which is me. When I decided to take you in, it was actually very painful for me. But when I learned that your real mother had died in a traffic accident caused by my husband's driving mistake, I couldn't just leave you alone. She confessed to me when I was 5, and she was ill in bed. Apparently, while my father and my real mother, his mistress, were out driving, he made a driving error and crashed into a utility pole. My mother, who was in the passenger seat, suffered a heavy blow to her chest and passed away. You know, at the time of the accident, you were still in your real mother's womb, Sarah continued. When you were born by emergency surgery, I thought, this child is a miracle, so I made up my mind to raise you properly. Your grandparents wanted to take you in, but I firmly stated that I would raise you. At that time, I was only 5 years old. I couldn't fully comprehend the situation, but I did understand that the woman I thought was my real mother wasn't, and yet she had raised me with love. She always made delicious homemade sweets for me, crafted cute clothes, and even slept with me when I was too afraid to sleep alone. I dearly loved Sarah. When Sarah passed away, I, still 5 years old, was entrusted to the care of my biological maternal grandparents. Later, my grandmother told me that my father had been having an affair with a woman named Carol for several years. When Sarah passed away, she quickly moved in and apparently told my father to abandon me. Perhaps I was a burden to my father because he pushed me off onto my real grandparents. At first, it was nerve-wracking for me to meet my grandparents as they were strangers to me. But my grandparents, who bore a striking resemblance to my real mother, took very good care of me. My father, who had acknowledged me as his child at birth and taken me in, seemed to have no interest in children at all, as I have no memories of him playing with me. On the other hand, my grandmother often said, "Lisa, you're such a good girl. Grandpa's so happy that you're his granddaughter," and he frequently bought me toys and sweets. My grandmother, like Sarah, was good at baking sweets, and she made anything I requested by hand. Her sweets looked and tasted quite different from Sarah's, and as a young child, I would selfishly say, "Grandma, I don't really like this." But my grandmother never scolded me. Instead, she smiled and said, "It's fun to know different tastes, isn't it?" What made me happiest was that they told me various things about my birth mother. My real mother met my father, the son of an executive at the company she worked at, while she was working. My father was a promising and competent individual, but he was known for his wild affairs with women. My mother, unfortunately, got caught up with it. When my father was proposed to marry Sarah, a well-bred young lady, my mother intended to break up with him. But my father would throw out cheesy lines like, "You're the only one I truly love," and during the course of our drawn-out relationship, I got pregnant. My mother, who was told by him, "I'll acknowledge the child, but I can't marry you," made a firm decision to break up and raise the child on her own. Apparently, they had this conversation in a car my father was driving, and he made a mistake, causing an accident. Lisa's mom was really an earnest and admirable daughter, but she was played and torn apart by that man. My grandmother seems really regretful when talking about it. "But you left us with a wonderful granddaughter named Lisa, so we have to be thankful for that." I think deep down, my grandmother hesitated to take me in, who had the blood of the man who had abandoned her precious daughter and took her life. But she never showed such feelings and loved me with all her heart.
When they took me in, my grandparents were in their early 50s. My grandfather ran a small factory, and while they weren't wealthy, they were able to lead a decent life. Also, about 5 years after they took me in, it seems that several thousands of dollars were transferred every month from my father as child support. But at some point, those payments stopped, and around the same time, the factory's business began to decline. My grandmother, who had been a housewife, started working, but it seems it wasn't enough to get the factory's finances back on track. Eventually, they had to sell the factory and their home, and by the time I was in middle school, we had moved to an old apartment. My grandmother would say, "Our grandparents lived really meager lives during the war times. Compared to that, we're totally fine," and even cut down on their own meals to make sure I had plenty to eat. Once I entered high school, I started working part-time too. I was really happy to receive unsold items at the supermarket where I worked until 8 p.m. The part-time ladies were also very kind to me, secretly giving me damaged daily necessities during delivery and giving me hand-me-down clothes from their daughters, saying it was old, but despite being poor, it was a really fun life. But that happiness ended when my grandfather fell ill. His disease progressed quickly, and in no time he was hospitalized. He was told he had only half a year to live, and money quickly drained due to his medical and hospital bills. My grandfather had canceled his life insurance shortly after closing the factory to save money. Distressed, I bought a magazine that introduced night jobs, seriously considering doing it. But when my grandmother found the magazine, she slapped my cheek while crying and saying, "I don't want money so badly that I would let Lisa do something like that," and I came to my senses. But what other methods were there? In the end, my grandmother bowed her head to all her relatives and arranged for the money, but I felt really pathetic for not being able to help at all. For a moment, I thought of relying on my father, but I wasn't told where my father was. I haven't had any contact since I parted ways with him when I was 5. And my grandparents should not have been in contact either. If only I knew the name of the company where my father worked, I could have ambushed him. But thinking about it, I only have memories up to the age of 5, so I wouldn't have recognized my father even if he walked in front of me. My grandfather passed away 6 months later. My grandmother and I had to downsize to a smaller and cheaper apartment. After graduating from high school, I started working around the clock. I worked as an office clerk during weekdays, a supermarket employee in the evenings, and a convenience store worker on the weekends. Sure, there were occasions when coworkers and fellow part-timers confessed their feelings for me, but I ended up calculating how much I could earn in the time I'd spend on a date. Perhaps it was because of the trauma of my father being a terrible man. I had a slight distrust of men, and I wasn't interested in dating anyone. My grandmother would often tell me with a warm smile, "Not all men are as bad as him. Even when I'm gone, I want you to be happy. I hope you find someone wonderful, but there's no need to rush." Time passed and I turned 25. I was still poor and without a boyfriend, but my life with my grandmother was peaceful. Out of the blue, we received a phone call intended for my grandmother. Making a strange face, my grandmother spoke into the phone. After she hung up, she turned to me and said softly, "Lisa, your dad passed away." Apparently, he had collapsed at work and passed away soon after. The woman who had called was my mother and father's old colleague. She was still working at the same company as my father and knew about me. She had taken the trouble to inform us. But honestly, I felt no shock at all. It doesn't really concern me, right? I mean, I'm adopted by you and Grandpa. I have no ties with that man. That's not entirely true. You'll understand when the matter of inheritance comes up. Inheritance? His? I don't want the money of the man who caused so much suffering to my biological and foster mothers. I swore to myself I would never accept it. A week ago, my father's last wife, Carol, called. Just as I had suspected, she brought up the subject of inheritance. "I didn't want to contact you, but one of my husband's colleagues told you about his death, so I had no choice but to call you because there's an issue with the inheritance." She began her spiel. In other words, if my mother's friend hadn't reached out, we wouldn't have known about my father's death, and Carol probably planned to keep all the inheritance. "Would you mind renouncing your right to the inheritance?" She began her cold, calculated speech. "I was the one who took care of him until the end, after all. You lived far away and did nothing. Don't you think you don't deserve it?" I heard that she had only cared for him for a few days after his heart attack. "Also, didn't he pay child support? That should be enough," she added. Actually, he was supposed to pay for 15 years, but stopped after only 5. "You're the one who was adopted into another family, right? You severed ties with my husband. Isn't it brazen of you to want to claim his money?" The more she spoke, the more I could feel her greed. I didn't want to talk to this money grubber any longer. I didn't want the money from the cruel, heartless man who had abandoned me. With that thought in mind, I answered her dismissively. Okay, I already thought of him as a stranger. Oh, thank goodness you've understood. The jubilant voice of Carol came from the receiver, but at the same time, my grandmother snatched the phone away and yelled into the mouthpiece. You must be joking. We won't renounce anything. If you want to start trouble, we'll hire a lawyer and fight you. Wait, what? While I was still startled, my grandmother hung up the phone with a slam. Grandma, why aren't we renouncing it? Then my grandmother smiled sweetly and began to explain slowly. That woman said you cut ties by going into adoption, didn't she? But that's not true. First, understand that you have the right to inherit the man's property. I didn't quite understand where she was going with this, but she continued. You went through a regular adoption. That means your relationship with your previous parent doesn't end, even though you were adopted. Huh? Is that true? There are special adoptions and regular adoptions. In a special adoption, the relationship with the original parents is severed. However, in a regular adoption, the relationship continues, so you actually end up having two sets of parents, your original parents and your adoptive ones. When we were deciding whether to adopt you, we were torn. If we went with a regular adoption, you might have been obligated to take care of that man if he needed it. You wouldn't want that, would you? The man who abandoned my biological mother, who started an affair with my adoptive mother, Sarah, was still alive. I definitely wouldn't want to care for such a man. But, you know, that man was an elite in a major corporation, and it was clear from his lifestyle that he was quite wealthy. That means if we went into a regular adoption, when that man passed away, there would be a good chance that a significant amount of money would come to you through inheritance. We thought, even if you had to struggle to care for that man, you might be rewarded in the end. Your grandfather and I discussed it and made the decision. I was moved to tears when I realized how much they had thought about me. But I don't want his inheritance. You may be angry thinking about it as that man's inheritance, but what if you think of it as money? You know very well how necessary and important money is for living, Lisa, after all these 20 years. That was certainly true. If we had money, we could have given my grandfather better treatment, and we wouldn't have had to make my grandmother live in this rundown apartment. No matter how hard I worked as a high school graduate, I couldn't make life easier for my grandmother. Right, I need money to make life easier for you, Grandma. It's not about me, Lisa. You can never have too much money for your future happiness. If you really can't bear it, why not donate the money after you receive it? There are plenty of people who need it, right? That was really true. My grandmother, who had struggled with money, would know the importance of money more than anyone. I changed my mind. I won't renounce, I'll fight for my rightful inheritance. Then I started doing some research about inheritance. A question arose in my mind. Grandma, can you tell me the phone number of the woman who informed us about that man's collapse? Sure, but what are you going to do? I have something I want to ask her. With a bright smile, I immediately dialed that person's number. A few days later, I called Carol and informed her of my valid claim to the inheritance. If you say you won't let me inherit, I'll hire a lawyer and proceed with a lawsuit, I warned her. This made her frantic with anger. Given her reaction, the inheritance must be quite substantial. Only getting half? Oh my goodness! Too bad, I said, and then hung up the phone. After that, I embarked on the action I had planned. I speculated that my dad, given his lack of discipline with women, might have been continuously unfaithful. So, I contacted the woman who had informed me of the man's passing and had her investigate his affairs. And it came out that he had been simultaneously cheating with at least 5 women at work. 2 of them, it seemed, had even been proposed to. So, I decided to have them claim compensation addressed to our late father. When compensation is claimed, if the person being claimed against has passed away, their heirs must pay it. This means in this case, Carol and I, as the heirs, are obligated to pay. The compensation claims from the 5 women will probably total nearly $20 million, so Carol's and my inheritance will each decrease by $10 million. It doesn't really matter to me, but as for Carol... And there's one more thing. This man had not paid child support for about 10 years. In this case, the unpaid amount is inherited, so again, it must be paid from the inheritance. The lawyer said, let's push as hard as we can, and promptly claimed about $10 million. The thought of Carol throwing a hysterical fit made me chuckle. And then, to make matters worse, Carol, in her haste, started investing in stocks and fell for an investment scam, losing almost all of the inheritance. Now, it seems she's barely getting by, living in a dilapidated, tiny one-room apartment over 50 years old, struggling with debt. What goes around comes around, right? Afterwards, with the inheritance I received, I renovated my grandmother's house and we're living together comfortably. I donated part of the remaining money to institutions like child welfare facilities. Recently, a friend of my mom brought me several matchmaking opportunities since she was worried about me. I started dating one of them and now live a happy life every day.